This is the Talkin Bout The Hoosiers podcast, presented by thehoosier.com. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Talking About the Hoosiers podcast, now presented by thehoosier.com. I'm joined by Kyle Staley. I'm Drew Rosenberg. Got a breaking news episode, but Kyler, we got to address the elephant in the room. No longer Hoosier Illustrated. Neither of us, for those who follow us on Twitter, you guys know this already, but we are now part of On3 Sports and the Hoosier.com network. So we're going to jump in and get into all of that more in a podcast. I think it'll either come out Thursday night or Friday morning. We'll figure that out when the time comes. But yeah, big change for us.
Yeah, big change. We'll talk more about it in our this week's episode. Talking about the Hoosiers, we'll address everything that needs to be addressed or whatever and stuff. But so don't panic and just enjoy our new upgraded branding because it looks tough. Shout out to Drew for making this stuff. But anyway, speaking of change, Indiana changing the roster around. Conor Enright, very first player out of the transfer portal to commit to Indiana.
Conor Enright, you are a Hoosier, reuniting with Darren DeVries, which, it was weird. It felt like in the beginning of his, recruitment in the portal, it was like, oh, he's like for sure going to be a Hoosier. And then it was like, oh no, he's going not to Indiana, maybe Iowa, and then flipped back to Indiana. He committed earlier today. Kyler, I guess, your initial thoughts on, following his recruitment to Indiana.
Yeah, it's definitely, and this is no knock on Conor Enright or anything like that. It's definitely not like an earth-shattering transfer portal commitment and stuff. And I feel like we've been kind of used to like those types of like big time transfer portal commitments. Over the last 4 years with Mike Woodson, it felt like everybody that committed to Indiana, to a certain extent, were just like, wow, this guy's one of the top players in the portal and stuff. And that's still the case with Conor Enright, but it's not somebody that is obviously like just game changing in a lot of ways. And that's no knock on Conor Enright at all, but it makes a lot of sense why he chose Indiana. Obviously, he played with DeVries at Drake for 2 years, played with Tucker DeVries a little bit. So, and obviously it's not official yet, but we all know that Tucker DeVries is coming to Indiana. But that'll be obviously official hopefully soon. But Conor Enright, a true point guard in a lot of sense, had a pretty solid year at DePaul last season. A guy that's just his strength is facilitating. His strength is running in offense, being a true lead guard, having a high IQ, has a really, really nice assist rate. His assist rate last year, and I don't know what the number, I'm trying to get to the number right now, but his assist rate last season was, I think, like 6% or so higher than anybody on Indiana's team last year. So obviously he's coming in here. He's going to score or not score. He's going to facilitate on a lot of scores. A senior level player, high IQ player, a little bit of a mixed bag when it comes to scoring. Looks like his best is when he can attack the lane, score around the basket, try to get those kick out opportunities and stuff like that. Not really a super great 3-point shooter, but a serviceable one. A guy that could probably make at least one a game. If given the opportunity. But I think I like it from just a system standpoint. Kind of, him knowing already what DeVries' system is like, what DeVries expects out of him, and for him to come in and he can be that leader right off the bat, and he's going to help whoever they bring in to kind of get up to speed a little bit when it comes to playing under DeVries. But I think it's a really good pickup, for the long run of this season, for next season, and I think it's a really solid one at best.
Yeah, a couple things I want to point out. First, we got to address the elephant in the room. Enright, he had shoulder surgery last year and missed, I think, the final 10 games of the year, like pretty much the final month and a half of the season. But it seems like he will be good to go for start of the season and won't be an issue there. And the other thing, too, I want to point out with him is we kind of talked about fit. People wanted Indiana to be more of a gritty, hard playing team. That's Enright. You watch his highlights, it's him diving for loose balls, getting dirty. He's the type of player, if he's on your team, you love him. If you're playing against him, you hate him with a passion. And it's kind of, I don't want to put that, it kind of gives me the Anthony Leal vibe of, maybe he's not going to put up these huge stat lines, but he's going to make an impact because he's always going to play hard and he's going to play the right way. And it's a really good culture piece, I think, for Indiana. You mentioned he's not going to be this 20-point per game scorer. He's one of the best passers in the country, and that's where he excels. But what he brings to the culture, I think, is so big for Indiana, and is something this program has desperately needed to change, with this new era.
Yeah, definitely gritty, tough. I think Anthony Leal's kind of a perfect example. I think he's more of a, I would say overall, I think he's a little bit better basketball player than what
Yeah.
Anthony Leal is. I think he can provide a little bit more
Mhm.
than what Anthony Leal could bring. But I mean, look at Big East last year. He only averaged 7.5 points a game. He had 3.3 rebounds for a guard his size. That's an awesome stat. But the stat
Mhm.
that obviously jumps out: 6.2 assists in Big East play last season. That's really, really good. But with him, and I think it's been kind of touched on a little bit by multiple different outlets and people that have watched Conor Enright and have done scouting reports on him. You got to take the good with the bad with him. He does turn the ball over quite a bit. I think it
Yeah.
was a little over four turnovers a game, somewhere around there. He's a guy that's going to have the ball in his hands a lot of the times. He's going to be the guy that's starting the offense, getting that fast break going in a lot of sense. But with that, if you have the ball in your hands a lot, you're going to probably have a high turnover rate. I mean, look at Miles Rice last year; had the ball in his hands quite a bit. It's just kind of how you have those turnovers, right? And obviously, you don't want live ball turnovers or anything like that. You don't want any turnovers at all. But I think with Conor Enright, you take the good with the bad, right? And you respect and you love his physicality, you love his mindset, his toughness, his attitude and stuff. And then if he has some some boneheaded turnovers and stuff, you just hope that they're not super costly.
Kyler,
But
breaking news. Breaking news
oh,
as of right now, just tweeted by On3. Tucker DeVries has signed with Indiana.
there we go. Tucker DeVries, another
Now
commit.
official.
So but I guess so we can go ahead and touch that right now. So this will be a
Yeah.
Conor Enright and Tucker DeVries type of breaking news. But yeah, Tucker DeVries, we knew that was coming, right?
Yeah. I mean, you
Obviously
literally said it, I think, 2 minutes ago. Worst
2
kept
minutes
secret
ago.
in college basketball.
Yeah, worst kept secret, but he's a top 10 transfer portal kid. I mean, he is. I mean, Indiana getting, not only do you get Darian DeVries, you get Tucker DeVries, and that guy is one of the most versatile players in the country. Really good size, a mismatched nightmare when it comes to playing on the wing and what he can do. I mean, he can play down low, he can play a guard position, he can play the wing position, but a true high level scorer in every sense of the way. Not the quickest guy in the world, but he uses his size extremely, extremely well to make plays. And I think you get him. That's a really, really good starting point for Indiana. Him and Enright.
Yeah, I mean, he shoots the ball really well. It's something, Indiana fans, have craved for years. And, DeVries is exactly that. He can shoot the rock, but he can also pass it. I think that's, kind of an underrated part of his game. We saw it a little bit in Battle for Atlantis. I think he had 16 and 4 assists against Gonzaga, but 6 assists in a, win over Arizona at 26 and 6. Like, overtime win. He plays hard. He shoots the ball well. And, there was a reason there was a lot of outrage from West Virginia fans over the way, he kind of handled his, end of his, I guess, year with West Virginia. It's because they wanted him on the floor because he's such an impact player and he's going to be that for Indiana next year.
Yeah, and obviously, very controversial in a lot of sense. Did he shut down shop? Could he continue to play? Who don't know? We don't know those answers, but all we know is that he's going to be playing for Indiana next year, and I think it's just a great starting point. And it's a guy that you can build around. He's going to have the ball in his hands quite a bit, and he could end up, depending on how this roster shapes out, he could end up being the leading scorer for this team. And I also look at the long run. I think of Trent Sisley. I think of him being able to go up against DeVries every day in practice. I think that's going to make Trent Sisley a lot better. I think it's going to make a lot of people that they bring in a lot better and stuff, because this guy, I spoke to a few of the former Missouri Valley players that played against Darian DeVries, played against Tucker DeVries and stuff. And one of them said that he thinks that he is an NBA guy. He thinks he's a guy that can go in and into the professional level and contribute. So, and I think so. I think he's got all the tools. I think he's got all the mindset to play it, and he's got the IQ. I think that's the biggest thing ever. He's got the IQ, and for Indiana to have both Enright and DeVries, guys that have been through Darian DeVries' system. That's a great starting point, and they're just going to build talent around those guys for next year, and it could end up being a really good team.
Yeah, and those two in their 2 years together, record of 55 and 15. So, I mean, they've won a lot of games.
Good.
Obviously, Drake, it's Missouri Valley Conference, but we saw it last year at West Virginia. Darren DeVries, huge turnaround. They pretty much rebuilt the entire roster from a 9-win team and took them to 19. Probably should have, or not probably, they definitely should have made the NCAA tournament, but for Indiana fans, kind of worked out in, their favor, where you were able to get DeVries a little earlier and kind of jumpstart the new era. So, big day for Indiana. I know Tucker DeVries, it's not really news. It's more just, now official, but still really big for the program getting him and Enright in. And this is kind of what you see. They always say when it comes to the transfer portal, the hardest commitment is the first one. You got the first one. DeVries, I don't really count that because you knew he was just kind of a package deal with Darren. DeVries coming in too. So now you have two guys, and it'll be interesting to see how, Indiana builds their roster and, fills out the rest of the roster moving forward. As, those are the only two guys really on the roster other than Sicily and walk-ons. It'll be interesting to see how Heron Zerno, if his where he kind of ends up, if not Indiana.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be Indiana, if I'm being completely honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't think so. But I will say this. The good thing about Darren DeVries coming to Indiana, it gives me much more hope that the NCAA is also going to give a medical waiver to Luke Goody. And that'll be the next one that you're kind of looking at. Other than the transfer portal guys, they still have the possibility of landing Connor or Dix. What's his first name from Iowa?
Oh my God, it literally caught me off guard. Why can't I think of his first name? Josh
Dix. Yes, who could land him. That'd be another big one. That's another top 10 transfer portal guy. And then Flory Badunga would be another guy that hopefully Indiana can maybe land with that. But I think Luke Goody right now, that's the circle part right now. Hopefully they can get him, signed or whatever. They can get that waiver for him. And then he can also be a part of the recruiting pitch on a lot of things. But two really good pickups right now by Indiana. It's a good base. It's a really, really good base, and I think they're only going to get better from here.
Yeah, you mentioned Flory Badunga. I am really high on him as a player. I think if you can add him to the team, add him to the roster, I think he has, all Big Ten potential year one. I think personally, watching Kansas play this year, it was like when he was on as good as Hunter Dickinson is, I thought they were better with Badunga at times, and getting a guy like that, it would be a massive boost. But, two guys or I guess three now on the roster, and you have some shooting, which Indiana is desperately needed. But, it's still just the start, and DeVries has a lot of work left. And, everyone who's kind of talked about him has said he's going to put in that work. So really no concerns for me. I know there was people were worried when Indiana missed out on Conwell, but, it's still the beginning of the portal. Final Four isn't until this weekend. So there's a lot of time left between now and the start of next season for DeVries to build this roster. I'm not in any rush. And, you have three guys now on the roster on scholarship. There should not be concerns right now from Indiana fans at this point.
No, there shouldn't. Most of these teams are not going to be built within the first month. This is only the month to enter. But Kentucky last year took them 2 months to build their roster. Yeah. I'm not worried about it at all. This Indiana team, not one bit. There's going to be a lot more people entering the portal, and there's going to be a lot more change going on in the college basketball landscape. But we'll talk more about that with Talking About the Hoosiers podcast this week.
Yeah, we're going to have a full episode later this week. And as always, you and me, we're going to have our coverage of IU athletics, but all of it now is going to be on the Hoosier.com website and the Hoosier on 3 on X or Twitter, the everything app. So make sure you are following the Hoosier on 3 on Twitter, checking out the Hoosier.com website, and you're subscribed to the Hoosier on 3 on YouTube. And make sure to turn your notifications on so you don't miss any IU sports content. And also on the Hoosier on 3 website, make sure you are subscribing. Right now I believe it's $1 for the first month and then 50% off after that. Do it now. You get access to the forums, premium content. I know there was stuff about Enright that was premium, a bunch of stuff following Indiana football, a deep dive into Darren DeVries his past years and advanced metrics and how we should expect Indiana basketball to play moving forward. So a ton of good stuff on the Hoosier.com website. Make sure you're checking that out. Thank you for tuning in to the Talking About the Hoosiers podcast. We'll be back soon.